EduTech Guys present a conversation from our live coverage of FETC in Orlando, Florida on Wednesday, January 24th, 2018. Enjoy the program.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
You guys have a great show, so this is really a pleasure to be on your show today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So my name is Dr. Matt Harris, and I might be one of your furthest guests travel-wise. So I live in Indonesia. I work at the British School of Jakarta in Indonesia, and I do some tech consulting in international schools and ministries of education in Asia. And I'm here because I was working with some panel sessions yesterday, and we had the opportunity to talk about a project I'm working on called the Blueprint for Technology in Education, which is it's fascinating. What we're looking to do is create this blueprint to talk about all of the touch points of technology in a school. So not just the teaching and learning aspects, but like the operational elements, the data pieces, how you address members of the community, outside relations, and of course leadership. Like hitting all of those together in one document that could be used as kind of like a common language to help schools work with vendors or to have senior leadership or district leadership be able to understand exactly what the tech guys are doing, right? What's the full scope of our jobs?
Sure.
Yeah. Because there's such a disconnect. And so we had these fascinating conversations yesterday with all of these experts talking about nuances that, I've been in this field for 15 years, and even I was just blown away by, you never know how much work that we do in these schools.
Oh,
so
sure.
It's just absolutely fascinating.
Well, I bet you bring a lot to the table coming from a more worldly view, outside of the U.S. to bring in some other stuff. But you're exactly right. In fact, my district now, we're working on a piece for transportation that involves tech tremendously with GPS and the whole bit, and providing Wi-Fi on the buses for the students, early morning riders, late afternoon riders. It's interesting the far-reaching, I've always said you learn more in educational tech than you do working for a large business because we cover the whole gamut. It's pretty neat.
Well, it's not only that, right? Is there one person, think about it, is there one member of a school community that you don't do some work with as a tech person, right? I mean, you're mentioning stuff all the way at the kids' homes.
Yeah.
But the difference between us and business is, number one, we don't have any standards to kind of say, or metrics, right? We're not a cost center.
Right.
We're a service center, right? And so
right.
a lot of schools don't seem to have that understanding. And the business folks that come into us, they're looking for ROI. They're saying we're spending all this money, but they're not seeing that breadth of service we're providing. And so that's what I'm hoping we can kind of progress on and help leadership or boards or districts say, okay, now I have an understanding of what we're investing, and I understand how important this is because it's a system, and we're really hitting so many parts of the system.
Yeah.
So once a district has the blueprint laid out and here it is and everybody sees what's on the blueprint, what's the next steps? What's your hope that they will take away from that in moving forward, or how do you hope they use that information?
Well, I think it is. You used great words there. You said a first step, right? It's like a common connection between everybody. So me as a tech leader, or you as a district leader, or even a vendor. Like imagine a vendor coming into a school district and selling their wares, which is very helpful, but very few of us have an understanding of exactly where that fits within the ecology of a school. If I had this blueprint, I could say, you know what, as a vendor, I'm meeting this particular area. This is where I'm going to affect you. I'm also going to affect indirectly these other areas. And then as a school leadership, I could say, oh, okay, now I have an understanding. I'm able to have a better long-term relationship with you as a vendor. I could also use that as an evaluative piece. Because if I know that my school is being affected by technology in these, let's say, 50 areas, but I've only accounted for 35 of them, okay, well, there's opportunity there.
Sure.
And decisions are either being made for me, or I have an opportunity to grow there. Or you could do evaluation, right? You could do some level of comparative analysis between other successful schools. You say, well, how do you address this particular area? Yeah. And then last, it's great for professional development. Right? So if I bring a brand new superintendent or individual teachers and I say, you know what, we're going to focus on the learning aspects of technology. Here's the areas that we need to focus on to make sure we have enough breadth for what you're going to be doing in the classroom. And we can do it in such a way where if I do it in Jakarta, Indonesia, or in Florida, we're speaking the same language,
right.
which just makes everything connected and able to exchange information that much stronger.
Yeah.
So I find it fascinating.
Well, and to me, I'm thinking it from. I work at an education service agency, and he's connected directly to a school district. And one of the things that we see a lot is, conferences are great, and and a lot of times you have the folks who go to the conferences, they meet with a bunch of vendors and they come back and they go, oh, we got to have this. This is the silver bullet that's going to cure everything. Well, and to me, it seems like if you had this blueprint, then as part of the strategy, you can take those different whatever services, software, whatever it is, and say, okay, where does this fit? How does this meet what we're looking at in this blueprint? Yeah. And or does it fit? This may be a great piece of software or this may be a great service, but if it turns out that it doesn't fit our blueprint, we're not going to go spend, $200,000 on it. That's ridiculous.
Well, it's interesting you're talking about that. One of the biggest pet peeves I've had for years is a standardization in SIS, Student Information Services.
Yep.
It's not. It doesn't exist.
Hey, try living outside the country.
Right. I bet it's just, in the country it's bad enough. Every state's got its own. Every district has its own. That's a hard one for us, especially dealing with our vendors. And like you say, when a vendor knows what the parameters are as they come in, then it makes it easier for us because we're always having to modify for the next vendor depending on how they need information out of SIS. But this is great, and you're right. It's those first steps. It's going to take some time, but at least the conversation has now started.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's going to be really awesome.
So the hope is that we can start building out pieces of this and then provide it in the public domain so schools can use it or vendors can use it. And just you hit a really interesting point about, say, an SIS, right? As you mentioned, it's not standardized, which affects the vendors creating the SIS. Mm-hmm. But imagine a school or a school district. I mean, you guys are familiar. A new person comes in, they want to make a splash, and they can identify all the errors with whatever system you have. Mm-hmm. But should we be people dependent on these decisions, or should we be systemically dependent? Right. And so if you have that system, you can say, we chose this learning management system because it's going to meet these needs, and this is a 10-year decision for us. This is not a 5-year one. We know where the errors are going to be, and we're prepared for that. And so they're not surprises, right? And so you create these longer-term, better relationships, which allow schools to go deeper with the technology as opposed to that surface-level stuff that a lot of them do when they turn over people or products.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a very key point, is that this helps a district map things out regardless of who's at the helm at the very top, right, or who's at the helm in technology, or which teachers are on board. That really doesn't matter. I mean, it does because the personalities and all that kind of stuff. I get all that, but as a planning tool and as the scope of direction for a district, I mean, I can see where this would be awesome. I mean, it's essentially, and the way I'm thinking of, I mean, it's essentially a business plan for the district.
Pretty much.
But encompasses much more than just the quote-unquote business side, exactly, of course. But I mean,
that's
awesome. Well, I mean, it's a blueprint. I mean,
but that's an important point too, because if you look at a lot of the resources that are available out there, and people are going to be talking about at this conference, it's mostly learning, which is obviously what we're doing.
Sure.
But do you have and the guys that you work with, or the people that you work with, do you have anybody that has a set of standards for operational uses of technology in a school? Or data systems right now, right? We just talked about SIS, and data systems are the largest ecology within a school, and we don't have any standards for that. We have practices, and we talk about these things, but there are no resources for people to go to at all. We have to have that, right? Yeah. Because those decisions have huge downstream effects on the learning.
Yeah. My guys have to modify every time we change anything, or anything comes in, or the history of educational technology shows us that key figures have changed individual schools dramatically, or as a word I made up, drastically and dramatically. Because you're right, that one person says, no, we're going to use this and this and this, and then 3 to 4 years or 10 years later, someone comes in and changes the entire platform. And that's not healthy for the teachers. It's not healthy for the students, which are our first two clients that we need to deal with. But then cost effectiveness has been thrown out of the. I mean, how many schools changed from iPads after 3 years to Chromebooks to, touch screens to smart boards instead of televisions to projectors? We haven't. We've got to get that in play. And think about it. We train our techs from district to district, from school to school, from educational entity to educational entity. They move. And if we get that standardized, then they're going to come into something they completely understand and go, great, you're working the same way I was working 4 states over or 2 countries over. Or, that's really nice. Yeah.
Well, and the learning piece is the one that really gets me as well. The ISTE standards are the gold standard but they're aspirational, right? They're places to go to. It's not operational. Mm-hmm. And when we look at them, at least in an international school setting, and domestic schools is here as well, you have to build up to those competencies. It's
Sure.
not something that we're just going to say, okay, I've given you training on a Tuesday, so by Wednesday you're
Right.
now a digital citizen, right?
Right.
But is it fair to those teachers or those institutions to try and make those aspirational growth while you're changing the playing field underneath them? Right? You can't do that.
Right.
No.
And so that's the idea with this, is that we can figure out what the playing field looks like. We can make informed decisions that are lasting. And as you said, it then is consistent between school to school, district to district, language to language,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is really interesting because I'm working at a school. I do some consulting work. We're working on creating a set of data systems for a brand new school in Medina, Saudi Arabia. So imagine all the challenges you have, but I'm going to have users that are doing Arabic,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and they have nothing consistent to go to. So hopefully we can create this and kind of unify all schools
Yeah.
around the world.
That is
That's the
awesome
idea.
stuff.
That will
Okay.
bring a lot of people together too. So I know you have a lot of sessions that you're speaking at, you're involved in, panels you're on. We hope you have a great time.
Thank you guys for this.
Yeah,
This
I know
is
you will.
Excellent.
And there was. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, share out with everybody. How can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter, Matt Harris EDD. You can find me on LinkedIn. And if you send me a note, I can get you connected with our blueprint for technology and education. We're just going to be sending out emails just to keep people updated on our progress. So find me on Twitter, or you can send me an email at matt@internationaledtech.com. Either
Awesome.
one.
Awesome.
You've been listening to a recorded conversation from EduTech Guys, live coverage of FETC 2018. For more information about EduTech Guys, visit edutechguys.com. And thanks for listening.